I was lying in a hospital bed with metal in my leg and pain in every bone, and she was in another man's arms. But I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I watched, and I waited, and when I stood up again, this is the story of how I turned betrayal into a quiet, brutal ending she never saw coming. Thank you for joining us. Every day I share interesting life stories with you. Today I want to share another touching story with you. Click the like button and subscribe to the channel. So enjoy listening. I used to believe I was a lucky man. Stable job, decent home, married to the woman I loved. Her name was Claire. She was charming, empathetic, the kind of person who made everyone feel like they mattered. We weren't perfect, but I thought we were solid. Until the day the ground literally disappeared from under me. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I remember it clearly, the kind of day where everything feels muted and slow. I was driving back from a work site when a delivery van ran a red light and smashed into my side. The next few seconds felt like being thrown inside a washing machine. Metal twisting, glass shattering, my bones bending in directions they weren't meant to. Then silence. Not the peaceful kind, the terrifying kind. I don't remember much after that, only flashes. Sirens. My bloodied hands. A nurse saying I had 3 fractured ribs, a shattered femur, and a traumatic brain injury that left me confused for weeks. They told me I was lucky to be alive. Lucky. Funny how that word changes meaning depending on who's saying it. Claire was by my side at first. She brought flowers to the ICU, kissed my forehead, held my hand like it was made of glass. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered, and I believed her. But as the weeks turned into months, something shifted. She started coming less often, said work was hectic, that traffic was bad, that the hospital made her feel claustrophobic. I tried not to read into it. I tried to be understanding. I blamed myself. I was broken, after all, scarred, angry, reduced to bedpans and sponge baths. Maybe I wasn't easy to be around. But love isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to endure. One night, 3 months into my recovery, I woke up alone in my hospital room, bathed in cold fluorescent light. The roses she'd brought had withered in the vase by the window. The get well cards had stopped coming. And I realized something that chilled me to my core. I didn't know who Claire was anymore. I was discharged a week later and sent home in a wheelchair. Claire had promised to pick me up, but it was her brother who came instead. "Claire had an emergency at work," he mumbled, not quite meeting my eyes. I nodded. I didn't have the strength to argue. But deep down, something inside me whispered, "She's not at work." The first few days back home were surreal. The house felt foreign, like a stage set built for someone else's life. There was a faint trace of perfume on the pillows, one I didn't recognize. And her favorite mug was suddenly replaced with one that said, "World's Best Dog Mom." We didn't own a dog. I chalked it up to stress, trauma, brain fog. I told myself I was paranoid. But paranoia doesn't explain lipstick stains on a wine glass when she doesn't drink red wine, or a second toothbrush tucked behind the mirror, or the way she started locking her phone and taking calls in the garage. Still, I said nothing, because I was terrified of the truth. Until the night I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was 2:13 a.m. I woke up to an empty bed. Again. I wheeled myself into the living room, thinking she'd fallen asleep watching TV. But instead I found her by the kitchen window, whispering into her phone. "No, he's asleep. He's not going to find out. I'll see you tomorrow." I didn't say a word, just turned and rolled back into the bedroom, my heart hammering like a war drum. The next morning, she was all smiles and coffee and good morning kisses, like she hadn't just shattered the fragile trust one was desperately clinging to. That was when the anger started to brew. Not the explosive kind, the quiet, festering kind, the kind that grows roots, the kind that starts whispering. "She betrayed you while you were learning how to walk again." I needed proof, not because I didn't believe what I saw, but because I needed to see it all, to burn away every last excuse I wanted to make for her. So I waited for her to slip up, and eventually she did. Claire told me she was working late on a Friday. I smiled and nodded like the fool she thought I was. But that evening I texted a buddy of mine, a retired PI who owed me a favor. Within 48 hours, I had photos. Her, laughing, holding hands with a man I didn't recognize. A man with the same stupid mug in his hand. The world's best dog mom mug. My vision went black for a second. I felt like vomiting, but I didn't. Instead, I closed my laptop slowly, breathed, sat with it, let the rage settle deep into my bones. She wasn't just cheating. She was mocking me while doing it. While I was learning how to use a walker, she was out drinking wine with someone who didn't have pins holding his hip together. I wish I could say I confronted her then and there, that I screamed, that I threw her things out the window, but I didn't, because something in me clicked. I didn't want to fight. I wanted justice, and justice takes patience. Let her think I didn't know. Let her keep lying to my face. Because the more she lied, the more she tangled herself in a web I was quietly building. You see, she thought she had me trapped. Physically, emotionally, financially. But she didn't realize that the man she was cheating on wasn't the broken man in the wheelchair anymore. I was rebuilding. And when I stood up, truly stood up, it wouldn't be just to walk. It would be to ruin her. The morning after I saw the photos, I sat across from Claire at the breakfast table, quietly watching her stir sugar into her coffee. 1 teaspoon. Stir. Sip. Smile. Like nothing in the world had changed. She looked me in the eyes and asked how I slept. Like a baby, I replied, my voice even. She laughed and said, "That's good, you need the rest." I watched the way her lips curved into a smile. I used to think that smile was the most comforting thing in the world. Now it felt like a mask, a cruel costume hiding the stranger who lived with me, slept in my bed, pretended to love me while whispering promises to another man. I began to pay attention in ways I hadn't before. Every detail. The way she'd check her phone in the pantry, claiming she was looking for spices. The way she'd linger in the garage with the door half closed, holding work calls at 9 p.m. How she'd hum pop songs she hated, the same ones playing on his social media feed. Yes, I found him. His name was Dylan. He owned a boutique gym downtown. One of those self-proclaimed entrepreneurs with inspirational quotes tattooed on his arms and more abs than IQ points. And Claire called him babe. I found messages, voice notes. One of them, God, I still hear it, was her giggling and whispering, "He has no idea. It's almost fun. Fun." My pain was fun. That was the night I started writing everything down. Every date, every photo, every message. Not because I needed it for court, not yet, but because I needed to remember, because gaslighting is a slow kind of death, and I knew she'd try to twist it when I finally confronted her. So I recorded reality. Every little betrayal. It's strange, when you live with a liar long enough, you begin to doubt your own senses. I found myself second-guessing things. Maybe she had just been busy. Maybe Dylan was just a friend. Maybe no. I'd seen her lips on his neck. Her body pressed into his. Her smile, the real one, the one I hadn't seen in years. And that's when the humiliation hit. I had begged her to love me again. I had apologized for being too distant when I was the one lying in a hospital bed, relearning how to move without screaming in pain. I had blamed myself for the arguments, for her coldness, for the way she flinched when I touched her. But it wasn't my injuries that made her stop loving me. She just wanted someone else. And now I wanted revenge. Not the dramatic kind. No screaming matches or public scenes. No, I wanted her to feel the way I had felt. Blindsided, hollow, powerless. But first I had to play the role. The doting, recovering husband. The one still trying. The one who didn't suspect a thing. And Claire, God, she leaned into it. She started cooking again, massaging my shoulders. Even suggested we reignite the spark. I think she believed the act made her cheating more thrilling. That there was some twisted excitement in playing the loving wife while sneaking out to meet her lover. What she didn't realize was that every kiss, every lie, every "I love you" was being added to a folder on my laptop labeled "The End." But there was something worse brewing under the surface. Something that made my skin crawl. Dylan had started showing up, not just in her texts or in photos. I noticed him once across the street, sitting in a parked car, wearing sunglasses, pretending to scroll through his phone. Then again at the grocery store, 2 aisles over, watching us. Claire said it was a coincidence. But I knew better. She had told him about me, about where we lived, maybe about my condition. And suddenly the game shifted. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was danger. I began locking the bedroom door at night. I kept a small crowbar near my nightstand, just in case. Maybe it sounds paranoid, but when a man's wife cheats while he's physically vulnerable, the line between humiliation and harm becomes razor thin. And then came the worst part, the intimacy. She started touching me more, whispering things, wanting to be close. At first, I thought it was guilt, but then I realized something. She wanted me to find out, maybe not consciously, but deep down, she wanted the truth exposed. The weight was too much, or maybe the thrill had worn off. Maybe she just wanted it all to crash. I had 2 options. Confront her now, or wait until I was strong enough to make her feel everything I had. So I waited. I pushed harder in physical therapy, started lifting again. My body ached, but the rage gave me energy. I smiled through every wince. Every step forward felt like justice inching closer. And while I was rebuilding myself, she was becoming more careless. Late nights, weekend work trips, a sudden interest in fitness, which I knew had nothing to do with health, and everything to do with Dylan's biceps. I checked our joint account one morning. She had bought lingerie from a store she never liked, had it shipped to her office. It didn't even hurt anymore. I just smiled, let her dress up for him, because soon he'd be dressing down for court. I met with a divorce attorney the following week. Quietly, I showed her everything, the photos, the messages, the timeline. She didn't say much, just nodded. And then, with a small smirk, said, "She's not going to see this coming." And that was all I needed. The game had officially begun. But I wasn't done. Because as I prepared for divorce, I discovered something that changed everything. And this betrayal was bigger than infidelity, bigger than lies. It had to do with my accident. And the night Claire was supposed to be with me, but wasn't. They say hindsight is 20/20. But what they don't tell you is how much it hurts when clarity finally cuts through the fog. I thought I'd come to terms with Claire's affair, that I'd already plummeted to the lowest depths of betrayal and humiliation. But I was wrong, so very wrong, because the real betrayal, the one that changed everything, didn't happen after my accident. It started before. Let me explain. I was reviewing my calendar that day, trying to reconstruct the timeline for my attorney, rereading text messages, phone records, banking statements, anything to strengthen my case. I was looking for patterns. And then, something didn't add up. The night of the crash, Claire had told the police she was at home, that she'd been asleep, and didn't know I had left to pick up parts for the site the next day. But I remembered calling her. At 5:41 p.m. Not once. 3 times. No answer. I had told her I was swinging by the office, then grabbing dinner on the way home. I even left a voicemail. But here's the thing, the voicemail never got played. She never acknowledged those missed calls. Never even mentioned them. And that bugged me. So I did what I should have done sooner. I pulled our cell phone records. Took a few days. A few frustrating customer service calls. But when I finally got the logs, I felt my stomach tighten. That night, while I was driving through the rain, minutes away from impact, Claire had been on the phone for 37 minutes with a number I didn't recognize. And it wasn't the first time. The same number appeared almost daily, sometimes multiple times, going back months. Copied it, plugged it into a search tool, and there he was, Dylan. But that's not what stunned me. It was the location. I remembered that our phone plan included device tracking, mostly for safety. I pulled up her history, and the pit in my gut dropped like an anchor. The night I crashed, Claire wasn't at home like she told the cops. She was on the other side of the city, near a private villa tucked between 2 industrial buildings. Same location her GPS had pinged 6 other times in the last month. A love nest. She was with him. While I was bleeding inside a twisted car frame, she was tangled up with her secret boyfriend, laughing under dim lights and satin sheets. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling cold creep up my arms. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the complete erasure of me. She hadn't just lied. She hadn't just cheated. She had chosen to be unavailable. While I was calling her for help, she was too busy cheating to pick up. I could have died. And she would have woken up beside her lover, whispered that her husband had an accident, and gone right back to sleep. Who the hell was I married to? I forwarded everything to my lawyer that night. I knew what we had now wasn't just a cheating case. This was shaping into something bigger, something colder, because negligence, emotional abandonment, lies to the police, that's a legal powder keg. But it didn't end there. Later that week, I received a package. No return address. Inside was a plain manila envelope. Photos, dozens of them. Claire and Dylan, at restaurants, on hikes, kissing in her car. One of them even showed them in my garage. Laughing, his hand wrapped around her waist. The timestamp? 2 days after I came home from the hospital. The envelope also contained a note. Handwritten. You don't know me, but I couldn't watch this continue. She's been lying to both of you. You deserve to know the truth. I stared at the handwriting. It was neat, feminine. My mind started racing. Who sent this? A friend of his? An ex? Someone watching them? Was this someone else Claire had betrayed? It was almost poetic. Like her web of lies had become so tangled, even her accomplices had turned against her. But what disturbed me the most was how calculated everything looked in the photos. She wasn't sneaking around in fear. She was comfortable, at ease, as if betraying me wasn't something she was doing. It was something she had decided. A lifestyle, a new role, the part of the loving wife. She was just playing it until it was no longer convenient. And apparently, that time was approaching fast. Because that weekend, she sat across from me during brunch and said something that made my blood run cold. I think we need space, she said. Space. Not a divorce. Not a separation. Space. Like I was some roommate she'd outgrown. She spoke calmly, like she had rehearsed it. Said she was under stress. That she needed time to rediscover herself. I nodded. Smiled. Inside I was boiling. This was her way of easing me out. Of setting the stage for the breakup to seem mutual. For her to say, well, we were already on a break. When Dylan finally moved in, she had the whole script written out. I could see it in her eyes. But she had no idea that I'd already read the ending. That I knew her secrets. That I had every photo, every message, every lie she'd told. So I told her, take all the space you need. She smiled, relieved. And I smiled too. Because while she thought she was escaping judgment, I was already building the courtroom. I was done being the victim. Now, I was the reckoning. It's funny how people confuse silence with weakness. Claire thought I was letting her go, that I'd quietly slip into the background while she found herself. But I wasn't stepping aside. I was stepping back to watch the whole stage collapse. I gave her everything she asked for. Space. Freedom. No questions. She started staying out later, coming home after midnight, smelling of cologne that wasn't mine. And I welcomed it. Every lie she told was another thread in the web I was weaving around her. I wasn't passive. I was patient. See, the worst kind of revenge isn't loud. It's surgical. It's letting someone dig their own grave and handing them the shovel. I started laying the groundwork. Quietly, strategically. I met with my attorney again. This time, I showed her the full stack, the GPS records, the call logs, the photographs, and the letter from the anonymous sender. I want to hit her where it hurts, I said. She looked at me carefully and asked, you sure you want to go this route? I nodded. I didn't even blink. She gave me a list of things to do, open new bank accounts, start separating assets, get appraisals done discreetly, track every dollar. Claire had always handled the finances, her idea. Said it made her feel secure. Now it made her exposed. Within a week, I had drained my share from our joint accounts, rerouted direct deposits, locked down everything with passwords she didn't know. When she noticed, she asked, why's our savings account nearly empty? I gave her the same tone she always used with me. Just needed some space. She blinked, but didn't press. Maybe because deep down, she knew she didn't have the right anymore. I also started recording everything. Nothing illegal, all in public spaces, all with consent or my own home security. I even upgraded the house with motion-activated cameras while she was out with friends. I didn't confront her. I watched. I let her believe she was in control. And the more comfortable she got, the sloppier she became. I'd hear her laughing on the phone in the bathroom. She thought the fan muffled it. It didn't. I'd catch her texting him right across the table, eyes flickering up just long enough to pretend she was still listening. Once, she came home drunk and let it slip. "You're actually being kind of sweet lately," she slurred, flopping onto the couch. "If you'd been like this before, maybe I wouldn't have needed someone else." That sentence burned, but I didn't let it show. I just smiled and tucked a blanket around her. Because the more she thought she was winning, the more spectacular the fall would be. A week later, I made my move. I called Dylan. From a burner number. Blocked. Mid-afternoon. He picked up on the second ring. "Hello." "Hey Dylan," I said calmly. "It's me. The husband." Silence. The kind that swallows entire rooms. "What do you want?" he finally muttered. "Nothing really. Just wanted to hear the voice of the man who's been sleeping in my house." He started stammering, some half-baked excuse about how things just happened. But I cut him off. "I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling to thank you." That shut him up. I continued. "Because of you, I found out who Claire really is. Because of you, I realized I've been wasting my life with someone who'd leave me to die in a twisted wreck while she made hotel reservations." He started to mumble something, but I wasn't interested in his side. "You should know, though, the little fantasy she's been feeding you, about us being on a break, about the divorce being mutual." I let the silence hang. "She's lying to you, too." Then I hung up. A day later, she came home in tears. "I don't know what happened," she said, slamming the door. "Dylan's gone cold. He said he needs time to think. I think he's pulling away." "Oh, I bet he is." I made dinner that night, her favorite, poured her wine, asked about her day, played the perfect, supportive, understanding man. And just before she went to bed, I left a small envelope on her nightstand. She opened it. Inside were 5 photos, the ones I hadn't shown her yet. Her and Dylan, all time-stamped, all printed. On the back of the last one, I had written, "This isn't space. It's a countdown." She stormed out of the bedroom 10 minutes later, shaking, pale. "Where did you get these? Does it matter? You went through my phone?"
No.
"But keep guessing." She tried to turn it around, said I was violating her privacy, that I was being cruel, as if I was the villain in this story. I let her scream, cry, blame me. I said nothing, and that silence, it scared her more than any insult ever could. The next day, she didn't leave the house.
No Jim.
No wine dates.
No Dylan.
She stayed curled up on the couch, occasionally glancing at me like I was a stranger. She was right. I wasn't the same man she betrayed. I was someone new, someone she didn't know how to manipulate, and that terrified her. But she still didn't know what was coming, because revenge, that was just step one. The real punishment was making her watch as I rebuilt my life, without her. And just when she thought it couldn't get worse, I uncovered something that made me physically nauseous. Something she had hidden. Not about Dylan. Not even about the affair. But about me. About my accident. They say every lie has layers. I'd been peeling Claire's back one at a time. But what I uncovered next wasn't a lie. It was a truth so twisted, so calculated. It made every betrayal before it looked like child's play. It started with a simple question. One that clawed at me for weeks. Why was I even out driving that night? The delivery, the route, the reason for being alone. It had never quite sat right with me. I was healing now, clearer, sharper. And something about that night kept scratching the inside of my skull like a trapped animal. So I started digging. The company I worked for at the time had a routine for deliveries, scheduled pickups, assigned drivers. But the file I supposedly went to retrieve, the one Claire said I volunteered to pick up, it didn't exist. I checked the logs. The pickup order was never submitted. So I called my former supervisor. Hey, do you remember that night? The crash. He paused. Of course. It was awful. We were all shocked. Was there ever a file scheduled for me to pick up? There was silence on the line.
No.
We'd already received all materials that day. You weren't even supposed to be out. I swallowed hard. Then, who told me I had to go? He hesitated. I don't know. I assumed it was your wife. She called the office and said you were running an errand for her before swinging by the site. That's what I heard. Wait, Claire called the office? I ended the call, my hands shaking. She told me I volunteered to run a quick favor. But what if I didn't? What if I was sent? What if Claire orchestrated that errand? I dove into our text history, my call logs. The night of the crash, she messaged me, "Hey babe, can you do me a huge favor? It's last minute, but I really need it." That was followed by an address. Not the office, but a location near the site, a warehouse I'd never been to before. I Googled it, and the blood drained from my face. It wasn't a business address. It was a private property, listed under a shell company. A shell company, linked to Dylan. You read that right. The man my wife was sleeping with owned the building I crashed near. And Claire sent me there. My heart began pounding, not from rage this time, from dread. What if the accident wasn't an accident? Was it a coincidence that I ended up in that intersection? At that time, was I meant to be there? Was it meant to look like a freak crash? I kept scrolling, searching, desperate for something to tell me I was wrong. But instead, I found an email, a deleted one, buried in her account, auto-synced from her phone to a backup cloud she never knew I had access to. The subject line? Insurance inquiry, hypothetical disability payout scenario. It was sent 2 weeks before my crash. She was asking about my policy, the one she convinced me to take out the year before, saying we needed to be safe if anything happened. The agent responded with a breakdown of figures. If I died, a lump sum. If I became permanently disabled, smaller monthly payouts, plus a settlement for injury-related trauma. I stared at the screen.
No breath. No blinking.
Just the hollow realization that Claire had been running numbers before I ever hit that intersection. She'd been planning something. Maybe not murder. Maybe not full-on conspiracy. But something. Maybe she didn't want me dead. Maybe she just wanted me broken enough to be dependent, passive, out of her way, long enough for her to build a new life with Dylan while milking the sympathy checks. Or maybe she didn't care what happened to me, as long as it cleared the path. I don't know what's worse. The possibility that she wanted me harmed, or that she simply didn't care if I was. I sat there motionless until the sun came up, just staring at the evidence, letting the weight of it all press down on me like a boulder on my chest. This wasn't just cheating anymore. It wasn't even emotional betrayal. This was premeditated abandonment. It was throwing a man into a storm and watching him drown with a smile. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed confirmation. So I called the insurance agent, pretended to be her assistant, asked if the inquiry she made had ever been followed up. He said yes. She requested a hard copy of the policy changes 3 days after my crash, and had them sent to Dylan's gym. I hung up. That was it. That was all I needed. Claire didn't just cheat. She didn't just lie. She tried to cash in on my trauma. She sent me out that night under false pretenses, and then prepared to profit when my bones shattered. The worst part? She came to visit me in the hospital, brought me flowers, kissed my hand, and went home to a man she'd made future plans with. I had every piece of the puzzle now, every thread traced back to her, and the time for patience was over. I wasn't going to shout, or beg, or throw things. No, I was going to do the one thing she never expected. I was going to set her free, and make sure she lost everything. I knew Claire would be home late. She always was on Thursdays. Hot yoga and wine with the girls, she called it. Translation, Dylan. I waited in the kitchen. Lights off. House silent. Just the tick of the clock and the slow hum of my own breathing. My hands weren't shaking. Not this time. I was beyond pain. Beyond rage. I had bled those emotions out over the past few months. What was left in me now was resolve. And tonight she would see it. The door opened at 9:47 p.m. I heard her keys hit the tray. Her heels on the tile. The soft swoosh of her jacket sliding off. She didn't notice me at first. Until I flicked on the lamp. She flinched. "Oh my God. You scared me." She laughed. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" I didn't answer right away. I just looked at her. Really looked. She had curled her hair. Lipstick freshly smudged. Her perfume, not the one she wore around me, but the one from the photos. The one Dylan liked. "You're late," I said. She tilted her head. "Okay." Weird tone. Did something happen? I stood. Walked to the table. There was a folder sitting on it. Neatly labeled. Tabs organized. She followed my eyes. "What's that?" I pulled out the first photo. The one of her and Dylan at the gym's back door. Her hand on his chest. His lips on her neck. She froze. The blood drained from her face. Where did you get that?" I didn't respond. I just laid out the next one. And the next. And the next. Each photo, each printed text, each timestamp. Like a knife, one after the other.
No yelling. No accusations.
Just truth laid bare. Claire sat down, slowly, like her legs could no longer hold her. This isn't what it looks like." "Then explain it," I said, my voice steady, too calm. She opened her mouth, but no words came, because there was no lie left to hide behind. "I know about the phone records," I said. "The emails, the GPS, the insurance inquiry, the false errand. I know about the building Dylan owns near the site of my crash." Her eyes widened. You went through my? "I survived your attempt to erase me, Claire. I didn't go through your phone. I went through your lies." She went pale. I stepped closer. "You didn't want me dead. I believe that. But you didn't care if I got hurt. You sent me out into that rainstorm, alone, to run an errand that didn't exist, while you were with him." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She knew. She knew there was no talking her way out of this. "You ran numbers, Claire. On my disability. You priced out what it would mean to keep me broken. You looked into payouts while I was bleeding in a hospital bed." She whispered, "That's not true. I have the receipts. Don't insult me." I let the silence fill the space between us. She began to cry. The same woman who'd lied with a smile for months now wept like a child caught stealing. But I didn't comfort her. Those tears weren't guilt. They were panic. "Are you going to divorce me?" she whispered. I tilted my head. "You'd prefer that, wouldn't you? Clean break."
No mess.
She looked up, hopeful, desperate. I leaned in. "No," she blinked. "What?" "I'm not giving you a divorce." Her mouth fell open. "But why?" I smiled, slow, cold, and final. "Because I want you to live in this house, every day knowing I know. I want you to eat dinners you don't taste. Sleep in a bed where I don't touch you. Walk through a life where you're tolerated, not loved." She shook her head violently. "You can't do that. That's cruel." "And what would you call what you did?" I snapped, my tone sharpening for the first time. "You gambled with my life, Claire. You played house with me while building a future with someone else. You looked at my broken body and saw a paycheck." She stood up, trembling. "You can't force me to stay in this marriage." "I'm not forcing anything," I said. "You're free to go. But if you do, you walk away with nothing." Her eyes flicked to the folder again. I nodded. "I've locked down the accounts, transferred my share, filed a marital misconduct claim with the attorney. Every dollar, every asset tracked and protected. You walk now, you leave with the clothes on your back." She collapsed back into the chair, defeated. "You're a monster," she whispered. "No," I said. "I'm a mirror. You're just now seeing yourself." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I said, "You don't live here anymore. You exist here. I'll never touch you again. Never look at you the same. And someday, when people ask what happened to your perfect marriage, I stood. You'll have to lie again. But this time, you won't be able to look yourself in the mirror while doing it. And then I left her there, in the kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of the life she thought she'd built on a foundation of lies. But I wasn't done yet, because Claire still had one more secret, one that even Dylan didn't know about. And when I found it, it changed the game one last time. I thought I had discovered everything. The cheating, the lies, the insurance plot, the false errand that nearly ended my life. I thought I had seen the worst of Claire. But I was wrong, because sometimes evil doesn't scream, it doesn't stab, it whispers, and it hides in the smallest places. After the confrontation, things got quiet. Claire kept her head down. She stopped pretending. No more fake kisses. No more elaborate excuses. We became strangers sharing a roof, waiting to see who'd blink first. I kept living my life, rebuilding it piece by piece. But one thing kept gnawing at me. The anonymous letter. The one with the photos. The handwritten note. You don't know me. But I couldn't watch this continue. It had no name.
No signature.
No clue who sent it. And yet, it was the match that lit the fire. Whoever it was knew something. And as fate would have it, I got my answer in the most unexpected way. A few weeks after I burned Claire's carefully constructed lie to the ground, I received an email. No subject. Just a message. Meet me. 3 p.m. tomorrow. Corner booth at Brady's Diner. I almost deleted it, but something in my gut said not to, so I went. I sat in the booth, facing the door, waiting. At exactly 3:04, a woman walked in. Mid-30s, sharp suit, nervous eyes. She sat across from me without saying a word. I'm guessing this isn't about the lunch special, I said. She didn't smile. My name's Ava, she said. I used to work for Dylan. At the gym. I leaned in. And you're the one who sent the letter. She nodded. I saw too much, she whispered. They thought I was stupid. Just a receptionist. But I saw the bank statements. The photos. I overheard things. Claire used to come by during hours the place was closed. Dylan would brag about the plan. What plan? She hesitated. Then pulled out her phone, opened a voice recording. I copied this from his office laptop. It's from a FaceTime call. You need to hear it. She pressed play. Dylan's voice. Casual. Confident. You said if he was out of the way, we could move in. You said he'd be too broken to fight back. What's the holdup, Claire? You promised me his money. Not a guilt trip. Claire's voice followed. Calm. Calculated. Relax. He's starting to trust me again. The money's moving. Once it's done, we ghost him. You get the gym upgrade, I get the house. I sat back. The final nail. She wasn't just cheating. She was actively working to wipe me out. Financially, physically, emotionally, all while keeping her hands clean. Ava looked up at me, tears in her eyes. I quit a month ago. Couldn't stomach it anymore. But I couldn't live with the silence either. You didn't deserve that. I nodded. You just saved my life. She smiled. A small one. The kind people wear when they've done the right thing, even if it cost them something. I took the recording. And I left. I didn't go home. I went to my lawyer. And we filed the final set of papers. Fraud. Attempted financial abuse. Spousal misconduct. Hidden assets. All backed by voice, video, email. Everything. Claire was served on a Monday morning. She opened the door wearing a robe and a fake smile. The expression died the second she read the headline at the top. Petition for full asset seizure and expulsion from primary residence. I watched her read it. Watched her realize she'd lost the game she thought she was winning. And then I said the words she didn't expect. You have 48 hours to leave the house. And Dylan, I smiled. He's about to get audited. She looked at me like I'd punched her in the chest. How? Let's just say, I replied. He should have paid his staff better. And not fired the one who knew where the skeletons were. She didn't cry this time. She didn't scream. She just sat down on the porch, like her knees had given out. And I walked inside. For the first time in a long time, the house felt clean. I didn't celebrate, didn't pour a drink or blast music or take a victory lap. I just stood in the living room, breathing, free. 3 weeks later, I sold the house, moved into a new place, smaller, quiet.
Mine.
I'm still rebuilding, healing, but I wake up every morning knowing one thing for certain. She lost. Not just the money, not just the man she thought she could break. She lost the right to ever rewrite the story, because I lived, and now I own every chapter. And just like that, our story reaches its conclusion. If you've stayed with us till the end, why not support us by subscribing? It truly makes a difference. I've handpicked 2 more videos that I believe you'll love. Go ahead and check them out. I'll be right here, ready to share another story with you soon. Until next time.